So we're on Peiches Amud Aleph on the top. Chasmu Eidim b'Rosh Hadaf v'cho. The Eidim sign at the Rosh Hadaf. Says the Gemara Idi. Is it really a problem? V'harav Chasim min hatzad. We know that Rav used to sign on the side of the document. So you'd have a document, you have a get. On the side of the document, Rav would sign. And seemingly that was okay. So how can you tell me that it's not okay if you sign b'Rosh Hadaf, if you sign on the top of the daf? Can you shut the door, please? Thank you. So, says the Gemara, Hasam b'shegago klap eksav. No, there is a way that it's okay to sign on the side. It's when the top is facing the get. So you have a get like this, and if you sign over here, so the top is going to be a problem. If you sign on the side, but you sign with your signature this way, so the top of your signature is here, basically going north-south. So I sign my name, Michal Zev Spitz, and everything is facing, again, down, like if Kilo I was writing like this. So the top of the letters are facing the get. If you do that, b'shegago, when the top of the letters are facing the get, it's okay. Why? Because it seems like you're clearly writing on that ksav. Elahad diktani, the problem is you have the next part of the Mishnah, Hekif Rosh Hashanah b'tzad Rosh Hashanah ve'edim be'emtza shneim psulim. The Gemara tells us further, the Mishnah tells us if you have one get over here on top and another get underneath it, the article I think has a picture. However, the gets are not both writing this way. The top get is being written up. That means the top is here and the bottom is there. So it's being written one way. It's like a mirror image. So one of them is being written down and one of them is being written up. As we'll see in a second, the case where both of them are being written down and you sign here in the middle, it's going to be okay for the top get because it's the bottom of the top get. But in this case, one get is being written this way, one get is being written this way, and you're signing in the middle. So you're at the top of this one, and you're at the top of this one, because they're being written in opposite directions. Says the Gemara, that's going to be puzzle. Why should that be? If you sign in the middle, so then the top of the letters are going to be facing one of the things. Seemingly, if you sign that way, so it'll be facing the top of that document, but it's still the top letters. If you could sign on the side and we go based on the top of the letters, why should we not go based on the top of the letters? Even if the top get is going that way, going the other way, why should it not work? Says the Gemara, Hasam dirami le kibber. No, you want to know why it doesn't work when you have one get going this way and one get going this way? It's because the guy didn't sign across. He didn't sign right, left. He signed north, south. So you basically have one get going this way, one get going this way, and instead of writing this way, he signed this way. So the top of his letters are facing blank document. So if they're facing blank document, both of them are going to be pasul. Says the Gemara, there's only one problem. But you just told me also in the Mishnah, how are you? You told me in the Mishnah too that if you have one get that's not written that way but written down, and another get that's written down, so you have two gittin written like this, you told me in the Mishnah that if I sign between the two of them, it's going to be kosher. But now you're telling me that the case in the Mishnah is not that you're signing this way, you're signing that way. So if I'm signing like a bolt, so then why should in fact it work in the case, even if the top text is facing down, why should it work? It must be that the Mishnah is talking about a case where you're signing this way. So if you're signing that way, you're fine. So if you're signing this way, then Lamaisa, if you're signing this way and then you have one going this way and one going that way, the top one's going to work because you're at the bottom of the top document. That's going to work. If you have them facing different ways, then they're not going to work, the signature in the middle, because it's at the top of this document and then the top of that document. The only problem we're left with is, so then why was Rava able to sign from the side? Says the Gemara, V'dirami kibber la bahadi ha-mikri v'la bahadi ha-mikri. So says the Gemara, no. It's not a din in the fact that it was like this. It wasn't written like a bolt. Rather, it was written across, like we said. So then how was Rav able to do it? Ela Rav b'diske havachasim. You're right. The case is that Rav would actually sign b'diska. What's b'diska? Rashi explains that it's a summons. He wasn't signing real documents like GITTEN. He was signing a summons if somebody was summoned to Beis Din. So then he was able to sign on the side. It wasn't such an official document. But in Echanami, for a get, you need to sign in the middle. So again, just to review, the way that it would work is if you would have a signature in the middle of two documents, assuming it's at the bottom of one of the documents, which would mean that the top document is basically facing normal and you sign like this, then no matter what the bottom document is, the bottom document is going to be puzzle whichever way it's facing, seemingly, because even if it's facing this way, your signature is going to be upside down. But if you have two documents and you have one like this and one on the bottom, if they're both facing the same direction, if you sign in between the two of them, so the signature will go to the top document and the top get will be kosher. There's no thing here with signing up down like a bolt. And when Rav was able to sign on the side of a document, he couldn't do that on a get. He was able to do that just on a non-quote-unquote official. It was an official document, but not official document, not as official as a get, like a like a summons in court. Get shekatz for ivris kasav sofer ve'ed kasher. So if you have a get that's written in Hebrew, And then the next part says that if you have a sofer that writes it and you have one aide that signs it, it's going to be kosher. Seemingly, every get is written by a sofer. So what's the chiddush here? The chiddush seems to be that if you have one aide sign a get, it's going to be kosher. But we know that's not true. Amar of Yirmiyah chasam sofer shaninu. No. Right, the chasam sofer. I don't know if this is where you got it from, but this is the chasam sofer. But chasam sofer shaninu doesn't mean that you have a get that's written by a sofer and then signed by one aide. Chasam sofer shaninu. It means that if the get is written by a sofer and also signed by the sofer and another aide, then the sofer can count as one of the aidim. What's the chiddush? Amar of Chisda, Hamani. Who is this? This is Rabbi Yossi. And as Rashi explained, it's Milei Dilo Mimsaran L'Shliach. The chiddush here is that you might have thought that if the sofer signs it, it's not going to be good. Why would it not be good if the sofer signs it? Because you might be worried that what happened? The Eidim, says Rashi explains, the Eidim might have been sent by a Shliach. So a Shliach came and he's telling the Eidim to sign the document and he's telling a sofer to write the document. But they're going to feel bad because if you're the Shliach to tell the sofer that he's not going to be able to sign the document, we just want him to write it, it's sort of like a patch in his face. Like, oh, we want you to write it, but we don't trust you to sign it. So the shliach is going to feel bad. So what's he going to do? He's going to tell the sofer, write the document and sign it as well, even though that wasn't the intention of the balabayis who sent him. And that might be a problem, you might think. Says the Gemara, no, we don't assume that that's a problem. And we assume that if the sofer actually signed it, then it wasn't the shliach who told him to sign it without the reshus of the balabayis, but in fact it was the balabayis who commanded him to sign it because he would never sign it without the balabayis telling it. Where do we see that? Amar of Chisda Hamani Rabbi Yossi, and that's what Rashi explains, that if he goes out and he signs it, then we're not choshesh that it was done by the shliach himself, and in fact it was assuming it was the balabayis, because as Rabbi Yossi explains, and he adds, a shliach is not even empowered to instruct somebody to write a get or to sign a get. Therefore we're not worried that the shliach did it, and therefore if you see a get that's signed by the actual sofer with one other aid, it's going to be good, because we assume that the balabayis told the sofer to write it, told the sofer to sign it, and told the other aid to sign it as well. Says the Gemara, there was a ksuva that came in front of Rabbi Avo. He recognized the signature of one aid. He recognized the writing of the sofer. He didn't recognize the signature of the second aid, and he wanted to go and make it kosher. Because what? You have the writing of the sofer. No, it's not enough that you recognize the writing of the sofer in one of the aidim. You need to recognize both aidim, and the writing of the sofer doesn't count, and therefore this get would not be kosher, this ksuva would not be kosher. Very nice, you recognize the writing of the sofer, but you need to recognize the second writing of the aid, the second signature, or else this ksuva is not kosher. Kasav chanichasav v'chanichasa kosher. So in general, when you write the get, so you're supposed to write Michal Zev ben Yerachmiel. You write your name and your father's name. What happens if you just write Michal Zev Spitz? If you just write your surname, your family name. So if it says, if you write the surname of him and the surname of her, it's going to be kosher. Says the Gemara, Tanu Rabbanan, Chanichas avos begitten ad yud doros. That the Chanicha, the surname only works until 10 generations. I looked around the Mefarshim, I didn't really understand what this is saying. The way I understand it is that it only works until 10 generations if it's not used continuously. That means, I don't know, one can learn the Gemara as saying that if I use the name Spitz, and it's been going back for many generations, so it would be a problem, like after 10 generations, for some reason, like the surname runs out, and I can no longer use it on GITTEN or on Ksubas. It sounds like, to me, the way I'm understanding it, and I'd be curious for your thoughts, it sounds like it's going to be expiring after 10 generations if it's not used. That means if it hasn't been used, and all of a sudden you pull up that in the 1400s, or the 1200s, however many 10 generations are, in the 1400s they used to use this name Spitz, which I happen to like now, and I retake it for myself. Now I can't consider, because I have no chazaka, that it's been used. But the way I understand it is that if it's used throughout the generations, and I know that my father used it, and my grandfather used it, and everybody else before him used it, so then in fact I could use it. But that's the...
They had surnames back here?
It sounds like it. Chanichas agos begitten ad yud doros. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar mer gimel doros kasher mikan ve'elach pas. Once you have 3 generations, if you can't go back 3 generations, then it's not going to be able to be used. Kaman azo hadar Rabbi Chanina. Who does Rabbi Chanina go like? Obviously, ksav chanichas agos begitten ad gimel doros. Who does that go like? Kaman Rabbi Elazar ben Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Amar Afuna, Mikra, where do we see an allusion in the pasuk that 3 generations or that 10 generations would be a thing? So we see by 3 generations, what does it say? Ki tolid banim ubnei banim. If you have children and grandchildren, 3 generations, uneshont vinoshantem, and then it disappears. So you see that after 3 generations, so the name would seemingly disappear. Again, the pasuk shot in the Gemara is that it would expire even after 3 generations, even if it's being used. I'm just having trouble understanding why that would be so. Amri B'Shua ben Levi, lo charva eretz Yisrael atsha avdu ba zayin bate dinim avodah zara. As Rashi explains, the Eretz Yisrael was only destroyed after there were 7 mishpachos of Menachem, 7 royal families who worshipped Avodah Zarah. Ve'eluhei, these are the families: Yeravam ben Nevat, Basha ben Achia, Acha ben Amri, Yehu ben Nimshi, Pekach ben Remalyahu, Menachem ben Gadi, Hoshea ben Elah. Shenemar, as it says in the pasuk, Lula yoledes hashiva nafcha nafsha bashimsha beodyom ambosha v'chafera usherisam l'charev. That they were desolate. The seven families were desolate. Their nefesh were miserable. The sun set while it was still day. They were ashamed and they were embarrassed. Amar Avami Maikra. So he says, what's the pasuk? Where do you see an allusion to 7 in the other pasuk? He tolid banim ubnei banim. You have banim ubnei banim. Where do you see 7 there? Well, think about it. Ki tolid is 1. Banim is 2, is 3. Ubnei is 2, is 5. Banim is 2, is 7. Ki tolid banim ubnei banim is an allusion to 7 generations. And again, there were 7 royal families who went ahead and worshipped Avodah Zarah.
So I can say to answer your question, the article says that the surnames they used in weren't like Spitz, they were like Ben, whoever your father was. And they can call the family by that Ben right. Until 10 generations. After that, they don't have no longer.
Even if it's in use? Even if it's in use. You're saying it was named after one specific person, so you can use that for 10 generations.
Your father's name was Avraham, so everybody could sign Ben Avraham for 10 generations, but after that, no one can remember. So in the 10th generation, you got to change the name, and now you become the lucky one. A more recent one.
Okay, interesting. Shkoyach. Says the Gemara, Amalei Rav Kana Ravasi L'Rav, Ksiv Bei Hoshea ben Elah. So it says by Hoshea ben Elah, one of these 7, Vayas hara b'nei Hashem. He did bad. However, Rak lo kamacha Yisrael. Right? It's a good compliment. You're not so bad. You're not as bad as the other 6. Uchsiv Allah v'Allah shlam natzar. And on him attack shlam natzar. So it's weird. So says the Gemara, I don't understand. You're telling me that he wasn't so bad. He wasn't as bad as the other 6, and yet he was attacked. Why would he be attacked if he wasn't so bad? Let the other 6 be attacked. Amalahu, no. You may have heard this before. Otan pardasio shehoshiv yiravam ala drachim Yisrael regel. Right? Yiravam ben Nevat set up guards and stations along the way that people would not be able to make aliyah Yerushalayim for the regel. Ba Hosheo bidlan. So Hoshea came and he got rid of them. So what's the problem? He sounds like he did something very good. Ve'afal pikein lo ali Yisrael regel. No. And nevertheless, the Jewish people didn't go up to the regel. Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu, Osan Shalim Shalol Yisrael regel Yechu B'Shevi. So they're going to be destroyed. So you say over here, why is it fair that they were punished in a generation? You're right, he wasn't as bad as the other kings, but they weren't punished because of him. They were punished because of what the people were at the time. Because at the time, they couldn't go before him, they couldn't go up to Yerushalayim. Okay, so you have a pass. We always say, right, you go up to Kadosh Baruch Hu after 120, and he says, why do you learn? What do you mean, Kadosh Baruch Hu, I need to make a parnasa? What do you do on Sunday? Sunday, NFL, what are you talking about? He says, no. That doesn't work. If you can't learn during the week because you're working and you'll only learn an hour a night, that's fine. But on the off days and all the other times, if you had the ability and you still didn't do it, that's where Kadosh Baruch Hu is going to hold the din v'cheshbon. So too over here, when they couldn't go up to Yerushalayim because it was all blocked, so then what do you want them to do? But as soon as he comes and he removes the block, which he did what he was supposed to do, and now the Jewish people still don't go to Yerushalayim, that's where they're going to get punished, and that's why they were destroyed in his generation. Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Marokva, Amar Rav Chisda, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah. Darish Meimar. What does it say? My dechsiv vayishkod Hashem al hara. HaKadosh Baruch Hu hastened the badness. Vayiviyah aleinu ki tzadik Hashem Elokeinu. God is a tzaddik, so He brought us bad. What does that mean? He's a tzaddik, so He brought us bad. Says the Gemara, Mishum Tzadik Hashem Elokeinu vayishkod Hashem al hara vayiviyah aleinu. Ela tztaka asa HaKadosh Baruch Hu im Yisrael shehigla galus tzidkiyo v'adayin galus shechunya kanyemes. Fascinating. No, He did it tzedakah for us by having the galus of tzidkiyo, the galus of Yerushalayim, while the galus of Yechanya was still miskayim. What's the galus of Yechanya? So Rashi tells us the galus of Yehoyachin, that 11 years before the galus of Tzidkiya, before Yerushalayim was destroyed, we know that Yehoyachin with most of the Talmidei Chachamim were sent to Bavel, and therefore he says that he went and before he destroyed Yerushalayim, he took most of the people out and sent them to Bavel so that they'd be able to learn by the Talmidei Chachamim and they wouldn't be destroyed in Yerushalayim. That's the tzedakah that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did at the time that he destroyed Yerushalayim. Dechsiv be begalus Yechanya hacharesh v'hamasker aleph. It says by the galus of Yechanya, the craftsmen, the gatekeepers were 1,000. Cheresh shebeshasha postin nasu akol kecharashim. Why were they called Cheresh, the people at the time of the galus of Yechanya? Because they were such great Talmidei Chachamim. When they learned Torah, everybody became speechless. It became like deaf mute. You couldn't say anything. They were so impressive. Masker kevan shesogim shuvein postin. And also they were so great in halacha that when they were so ger halacha, so that was it. That was halacha. V'kama elef, and what's the 1,000? What's the illusion? Ula amar shehiktim shtei shanim le uvino shantem. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu took them out, as Rashi explains, 850 years after they settled Eretz Yisrael. 2 more years and they would have been totally destroyed. So He took them out 2 years early. What was it, 2 years? He took them out 2 years early as a tzedakah, so that they wouldn't be destroyed and they would go to Bavel and be able to learn. Amar Racha bar Yaakov, we have an allusion to this 850 years that they were in Yerushalayim. Shma mina meheira de Mari Alma Tmoni Mea v'chamishin v'tartehu. Rashi says, Kiminyan vinoshantem da'aksiv ki avei tovei dun maher. You're going to be destroyed quickly. Vinoshantem, I don't know if you do the math, supposedly vinoshantem adds up to 852. Try it at home. Okay, says the Gemara, get mi'usa. A forced get. Very interesting. So forced get. Be Yisrael kosher without kachavim pasul. If a Yisrael Bezdin, if a Jewish Bezdin forces a get, it's kosher. By ovdei kachavim, it's pasul. What does it mean, a forced get? We know this is a big thing today with agunas. So Rashi says that a forced get bechazaka is only, as we'll see in a second. We'll see actually in a second in the Gemara. Says the Gemara, says the Mishnah, v'ovdei kachavim chov tenoso ve'omrin lo ase mashi Yisrael omrin l'chav kosher. So this was a little bit hard to understand. It says that if a ovdei kachavim, non-Jewish court forces a get, it's pasul. But when you beat the guy until he gives a get, that's not considered to be forcing a get. That's going to be kosher. But if you force him to give a get, that's going to be a problem for ovdei kachavim. But if you just beat him a little bit, so that's not going to be a problem. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, get ha'meusa b'Yisrael. So there's two different types of gets. So we basically have four gittin here. What do we have? We have a Jewish court and a non-Jewish court. We said if a Jewish court forces them to give a get, it's going to be kosher. By a non-Jewish court forces them to give a get, it's not going to be kosher. The problem is by forcing to give a get, there's two types of gittin you could force. A force that's kedin, that should be forced, and a force that's shelo kedin, that you shouldn't be forcing him. What's a force shekedin? As Rashi explained in the first Rashi in the Gemara, Kigon hanach damrinan ban, we had different cases of yotzi v'yeseng ksuva, when he needs to divorce her and give the ksuva. O shahaisa asurlo, she was mizana, and now she's asur him. In those cases, they're asur to be together. Kedin, the din tells us that they should get divorced, and in that case, we can go ahead and Bezdin can force him to give a get. But shelo kedin would mean that if they force him in a case where he's not, where he doesn't have to give a get, if they force him in that case, so then the halacha is going to be different. So let's go through the four cases again. The case where Yisrael forces him to give a get when they're quotefully, rightfully allowed to force him. A case where they force him to give a get where they shouldn't be forcing him. A case where the ovdei kachavim force him to give a get where they rightfully, not they, but where a Jewish court should be rightfully forcing. And a case where the ovdei kachavim do it where they shouldn't be forcing it, which is shelo kedin. So let's see. Kedin is when mitzad the Torah he should be divorcing his wife. Shelo kedin is when mitzad the Torah he doesn't have to divorce his wife. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman Amar Shmuel, get ha'meusa b'Yisrael. So if a Jewish court forces it, kedin, when they should be enforcing it, kosher, it's a totally good get, as the Mishnah says. Shelo kedin, if they force it when they shouldn't be forcing it, then it's going to be pasul. Then the get is not going to work. But interestingly, listen to this: if they force it when they shouldn't be forcing it, yes, the get is not going to work. However, posel, it's going to be posel what? It's going to be posel her. She's married to a guy now, so she doesn't have to get divorced from her. But if her husband would die, she can marry a Kohen. But if her husband would go ahead and divorce her, then she couldn't marry a Kohen. Since she got this get from Bezdin, which was forced upon the husband, even though the husband now, it wasn't kedin, and therefore the husband doesn't have to divorce her, and the get doesn't fchal, since it has like the sniff of a get, if the husband now dies and she should be mutter to a Kohen, we're going to say she can't marry a Kohen because she got a sniff of a get in her lifetime. Again, the get that Bezdin forces him to give when it's shelo kedin, when they shouldn't be forcing, so pasul, that get's not going to work. But since it's still a get that he gave her being forced by Bezdin, even though it's not going to work, it's posel her that if he goes out and he dies now, she should be able to marry a Kohen. She can't marry a Kohen because she got, even though it was a pasul get, she got a get from Bezdin. Uva ovdei kochavim kedin, if they force her, so then if they force him to give it the way that in a case where he should be giving it, but again, they're not allowed to force him because it's ovdei kochavim, it's going to be pasul. And similar, however, in the case of the Yisrael, posel, it's going to be posel her as well. Shelo kedin, if the ovdei kochavim force him to give a get in a case where he shouldn't be forced, shelo kedin afilu reach haget ein ba, then it's one step down. So you see that the Yisrael is one step higher. In the case of Yisrael kedin, where they should be forcing him, so if he gives it, it works, nothing to talk about, they're divorced. In the case shelo kedin, where they shouldn't be forcing him, it's not going to work the get, but it's going to have a sniff of a get, and therefore, if he ever dies, she's not going to be able to marry a Kohen. In the case of the ovdei kochavim, it's one step down. That means if they do a kedin, even though they should have no power at all, it shouldn't work, and therefore the get is pasul if they force him. However, it has a sniff of a get, and therefore if he would die now, she won't be able to marry a Kohen. But if the ovdei kochavim do it in a case where he shouldn't be forced at all, so since it's one step down, the get doesn't work at all, and the get doesn't even pasul her to marrying a Kohen in next. That's what it means, afilu reach haget. Shelo kedin afilu reach haget ein bo. Manashach says, I don't understand. By a non-Jewish court forcing her, manashach, make up your mind. Either they're fit to give gittin or to force gittin, or they're not fit. If they're not fit to force gittin, so then if they force the husband to give a get, why should it have, and so then it shouldn't have anything. It doesn't have a reach haget. But if they're not fit, so then why, if they force him to give a get, even in a case where mitzad adin he should be giving it, so why is it posel her? It should be totally gone. Ovdei chavim, I would say, if they're not fit to give gittin, then anytime they force the guy to give a get, it shouldn't be anything. It shouldn't even have a reach haget. It shouldn't even have a sniff of a get. Says the Gemara, make up your mind. If they're actually people that should be able to force a get, it kasher nami kasher. Then if they force husband to give a get, it should be a kasher get. And if they're not able to force a get, so then when they go ahead and they give the get, and they force him to give the get, so it shouldn't be posel her at all. No. Mitzad hadin, when a ovdei kochavim forces a guy to give a get, it's actually kosher. So what do you tell me, that the get is pasul and just posels her? Because we don't want women to be friends with the big macho ovdei kochavim who are going to be able to force the husband to give a get. And therefore mitzad hadin, an ovdei kochavim can actually force a husband to give a get. Mitzad the gezerah, that we don't want the wives to get too friendly with the non-Jewish big men who are going to force their husband to give a get. So we're going to say that if the husband gives a get based on the advice, well, more than advice of the Ovdei Kochavim, then it's not actually going to work. Says the Gemara, Yihachi shelo kedin afilu reach haget ein bo. But I don't understand. If it's shelo kedin, then why is there no reach haget? V'nihave shelo kedin kisrael u'mafsil nami lifsol. If mitzad halacha really it works if an Ovdei Kochavim forces, but the Rabbanan say we don't want it for a separate reason. So then when the Ovdei Kochavim force shelo kedin, it should work and it should at least have the reach haget. Says the Gemara, elahav de Rav Misharshia bedusi, and that's why I didn't concentrate on it so much, because the Gemara throws out Rav Misharshia. That's not true. It's not true that mitzad adin, the get of an Ovdei Kochavim, when the Ovdei Kochavim force him, it's not true that it's a good get. It's not a good get at all. So we're back to the beginning. V'tayim amai. Again, the Gemara seems to be learning now that when an Ovdei Kochavim forces a get, it's nothing. So then you have to ask the obvious question. If when the Ovdei Kochavim forces a get, they don't have the power, so then I understand when they force the get in the case of Shelo Kedin, where the guy mitzad the Torah should not be giving a get. So I understand why when the Ovdei Kochavim force it, it's Keilu, he gave a piece of paper, and it doesn't work, and she's not puzzled, and she's not usher to anybody. But why in the case where the Ovdei Kochavim come along, and they force a get on a husband, and the husband gives the get, so it's not going to work, but it's going to be posel her? What's the problem? Says the Gemara, v'tayim amai kedin, because it's kedin bekedin de Yisrael michlaf. If you do it in the case of kedin, you're going to mix it up with the Yisrael. Shelo kedin bekedin Yisrael lo michlaf. If it's shelo kedin, you're not going to mix it up with the Yisrael. Let's say this outside for a second, and let's just speak this out. So you have a case again. You have 4 cases. You have the case where the Jewish court forces the husband to give a get in a case that he should be giving a get mitzad halacha. What's the din? Perfectly fine. It's a good get. They're divorced. She can marry, only she can't marry a Kohen because she's a divorced lady. In a case where the Jewish court is forcing him to give a get when they shouldn't be forcing him, what did we say? It's not going to be a good get, but it's going to be posel her. Why is it going to posel her? Seemingly as a gezerah, it's the case of where it is kedin. Because if we say that shelo kedin is not a good get, as Rashi explains, so then we're going to somehow get confused and think that kedin, when they're doing it rightfully, it's not going to be a good get either. So shelo kedin, you're not going to make it kosher the get, but we're going to be posel her so that we don't think that kedin is not going to work either. So that's already a gezerah. In the case of Yisrael, who's doing it shelo kedin, the gezerah is that she's not, the get doesn't work, she's still divorced to this husband, she's still married to this husband, but it's going to be posel her if she wants to go ahead and marry somebody else after the husband dies. So now go to the case of the Ovdei Kochavim. So in the case of the Ovdei Kochavim, so in the case where the Ovdei Kochavim do it kedin, where the guy should be giving a get, but the Ovdei Kochavim have no right. So why is she posel? Because if we don't make her posel in the case of the Ovdei Kochavim who are doing it kedin, then the gezerah that we're not going to make her posel in the case where the Jews do it kedin. So that's fine. As long as you have one gezerah, it's fine. So the case of Yisrael Shelo Kedin, there's one gezerah, it's going to be posel, the get is going to be pasel, but it's going to be posel her. Again, if you see, it comes out the same. A Yisrael Shelo Kedin is going to come out as the same halacha as an Ovdei Kochavim Kedin. It's going to be a bad get, but it's going to be pasel the girl. Why? Both of those cases are gezerah that you might say that a Yisrael Shekedin is going to not be a good get. However, now the last case of a non-Jewish court who does it Shelo Kedin, now you got 2 whammies. How are you going to go ahead and say say that she should be posted in that case? You can't. Because the whole reason that a non-Jewish court, even when they do it Kiddin, is not going to work is because of a Gezerah. So if you're going to tell me now that when a non-Jewish court does it, Shelo Kiddin, it should be Gezerah Alts Kiddin, but that already is a Gezerah. And it would be a Gezerah Le Gezerah because you're one step removed. I know it's a little bit confusing, but again, Yisrael who does it Kiddin, it works perfectly. Yisrael Shelo Kiddin, Gezerah Alts Yisrael Kiddin, it's not going to work the get, but it's going to posel her. Ovdei Kochavim Kiddin shouldn't work, but it's going to be posel her because a gezerah of Yisrael Kedin. The Ovdei Kochavim Shelo Kedin can't work because it would have to be a gezerah legezerah. Because it would have to be a gezerah of Ovdei Kochavim Kedin, which itself is already a gezerah of Yisrael Kedin, and therefore, in the case of Yisrael Kedin, it's going to work perfectly and they're going to be divorced. And the opposite extreme is when it's Ovdei Kochavim Shelo Kedin, when he shouldn't be forced at all, and they force him. So the Lamaisa, it's not going to even have a sniff of a get. And then the two cases in the middle, Yisrael Shelo Kedin or Ovdei Kochavim Kedin, those two cases will be cases of where the get will not work, but she will be posel to marry a Kohen if the husband shall die.
So this sniff is enough to prevent Yavamas, and has to do Chalitza as well, probably then, right?
That's what it sounds. Well, no, because they're divorced. You're saying
No.
if he dies, it sounds like he would still have to do Yibam, yeah. Seemingly, it's still have to do Yibam. Yeah, interesting. It's a good shot. So Rav Yosef was sitting there, and Abaye found him. He was forcing a husband to give a get. We're not in Eretz Yisrael. We don't have real smicha. In Eretz Yisrael, you get real smicha. Nowadays, I give smicha, you just got to pay a few $100s. That's what I did. But at the end of the day, in Eretz Yisrael, they had real smicha. Hediotos, outside of Eretz Yisrael, they didn't have real smicha. So the way he's learning is that a person with not real smicha cannot force a get. So how can you go ahead and force a get if you're not in Eretz Yisrael? You're in Bavel. Vitanya haribitar for no merkom makom shatamotze. This is a separate halacha. Then the second part of this brayso is going to be what's important for us. But the first halacha in the brayso, which is not connected to the story, is kol makom shatamotze obruyos shalov decham. This is very halacha l'maisa. If you have a gathering over decham, you have a non-Jewish court. It happens all the time. Let's go to the non-Jewish court. It's the same exact thing as the Jewish court. It'll be the same exact thing. You can't go to the non-Jewish court even if you know that the result, that the verdict will be the same as if you went to Beis Din. Don't go to a non-Jewish court. If you're forced to go to a non-Jewish court by somebody that's not keeping halacha, or you're dealing with a non-Jew, it's a different discussion. But two Jews who are arguing cannot go to a non-Jewish court. Lifnehem before a Jewish court, velo lifnei ovdei kochavim. For our purposes, another thing we learn from lifnehem, davar acher lifnehem, velo lifnei hedyotos. You want to go, I want to bring a mishpat to a Jewish, it needs to be a Jewish court of real somech. So it have to be smicha, not somebody that's a hedyot outside of Eretz Yisrael. So he's saying to him, how can you go ahead and how can you force the guy to give a get? You're not a Beis Din in Yisrael. You're outside of Eretz Yisrael. You're not a Beis Din of ovdei kochavim, of course, but only a Beis Din in Yisrael can go ahead and force a get. Amalei, no. Anan shlichusei ka'avdinan. I'm the shliach of the Beis Din in Eretz Yisrael. Midid hava odos valvos. When it comes to gittin, I can be a shliach of the Beis Din to force him to give a get. When it comes to hodah, somebody admits that he owes money, I can be a shliach of Beis Din to make sure he pays. When it comes to halva, I can be a shliach of Beis Din to make sure that the guy pays back. Ihachi gezelos v'chavolos nami. So he says back to him, but then when somebody steals something or somebody injures somebody, why can't you go ahead and act as the judge, as a shliach of Beis Din? Says the Gemara, ki avdinan shlichusei b'miosa d'shlicha. No, you can be a hedyot, can be a shliach of Beis Din for things that are common. Injuries are not common, seemingly. Gezelos, stealing, is not common. Hodos, halvos, and gittin, those are common, and therefore those will work. And therefore, even though he was a hedyot, and seemingly you need to have a real Beis Din with smicha, he can act as a shliach in order to force somebody to give a get. Zak the Mishnah. Yatza shma be'ir. There was a rumor in the city. Mekudeshes. Raizel Mekudeshes. If there's a rumor, she got engaged. Mazel tov, she got engaged. Nobody actually saw the engagement. Mekudeshes. Raizel Mekudeshes. She's considered to be Mekudeshes, and she would need a get if she wants to go ahead and be Mekudesh or somebody else. Megureshes. If she's divorced, there's a rumor that she got divorced. Raizel Megureshes. The Gemara's going to have a problem with this one. What does that mean? You have a rumor that somebody got divorced. She's divorced. Since when do we make an Eishes Ish Aser to her husband? She has a chazaka based on a rumor. Says the Gemara, we'll get to that. But even in the case, we'll get to Megureshes in a second. Even in the case of Mekudeshes, we're going to say that the rumor she is Mekudash, that's only if there's no mitigating factor to break the force of the rumor. What would be a mitigating factor? Ezehu amitla. Giresh ishploni ad ishto al tanai. He divorced her on condition. There's a rumor that he divorced her. Not that he divorced her, he divorced her on condition. Once the rumor comes with all these details, mitigating factors, he divorced her on condition. What's the condition? Broken telephone, we're not going to believe the rumor. Or Zarak la Kiddusha Savei Karav La Savei Karav Lo. Did you hear how that they got engaged? But they didn't just get engaged. He threw the Kiddushin to her. I wouldn't want to get engaged to a guy like that, throwing the Kiddushin. Okay, but he throws a Kiddushin to her. We're not sure if it landed closer to him or closer to her, whether it worked or not. So in that case, Savei Kiddushin, it's a rumor. Maybe they were engaged, maybe they weren't engaged. That's not going to work. Zoe Amidla, it's not going to work. But in general, if you have a rumor that somebody got engaged or somebody got divorced, that rumor will be believed. Says the Gemara, V'asrina la Gavra, are we really going to make her usher to her husband if she's already married to a husband and now there's a rumor that she got divorced? So Lamaisa, they're going to be divorced. We don't listen to a rumor after they're married. They have a chazaka that they're married, and if there's a rumor that they're divorced, so we're not going to listen to the rumor. Hachi kamar, no. Yatza shma be'ir. This is what it means. If there's a rumor of mikudeshes, harezo mikudeshes. What's the rumor of migureshes? Not it's a rumor of mikudeshes. It's a rumor of migureshes. It's a rumor of Las Vegas migureshes. Mikudeshes u migureshes. They were mikudash and they were migurash in the same day. Says the Gemara, harezo migureshes. That case is migureshes. My taima kol v'shovroimo. It makes sense. If you say migureshes, a rumor she's divorced, we don't believe it because Lamaisa she has a chazaka that she's married. But if the rumor is that she was married today and divorced on the same day, since the very same rumor that's telling us that she got married is telling us that she got divorced, so we believe the rumor that she mamanashach. Either we believe the rumor that she got married and then we believe the rumor that she got divorced, or we don't believe the rumor. It's interesting because the Gemara seems to be saying kol v'shovro imo. It sounds like harezo migureshet. It sounds like we're believing the rumor that she got married and divorced. Because again, what's the nafkami? The nafkami would be, if we don't believe the rumor at all, then she's not divorced. Because she just didn't get married. She ends up in the same state. She's not married to this guy, but it makes a difference whether she was never married to the guy or she was married for 5 minutes. It sounds like the Gemara is saying, and we'll stop here, that kol v'shovro imo, that if the rumor that she was engaged, mikudish, and migureshet on the same day, then we're going to believe the rumor. We're going to believe the miguresh as part of the rumor, both of them, and Lamaisa, she will be considered to be a migurash woman. See you again tomorrow.